school, but you still have finals to write, and I know how much that sucks. But hopefully these tips will help you guys, because when I was in high school, if we're being completely 100% honest, I didn't study that much. And I still got pretty good grades, so when I got to university, I was like, I got this, no big deal, I know how to study. And I really didn't. I knew basically nothing about studying, and I know how ridiculous that actually sounds, but university is its whole different ballgame, or once you start getting to courses that are a little bit harder, whether that be in high school or university or college or whatever it is, studying is really important, and knowing how to study is actually a lot harder than it sounds. So hopefully these tips will help you guys out, because I know they helped me, and I never really want to say that I perfected my studying habits, because I'm always learning how to do things better and more efficiently, but these are some tips that really helped me get through first year university and finals and midterms and all of that, and they even helped some of my friends that I told them about, so hopefully they'll help you guys too. So let's get to the video. Alright, so my first tip on how to ace your finals is to make a study schedule. Now I know that a lot of people kind of scoff at this and they're like, oh, I don't need a study schedule, I got this. But especially when you have more than 1 or 2 finals that you need to write and you have a lot of time to study for them, or even if you don't, it really helps me personally at least to know when I have to do what, and to wake up knowing exactly what I need to study that day. So what I like to do to make my study schedule is that I go on Microsoft Word and I just kind of open one of the default calendar templates they have, and I basically write down however long my study schedule is, or not my exam period is, and then I write all my exam dates, times, and locations, so I have those. And then basically how I decide, I like to have 2 to 3 courses per day that I study, depending on how many finals I had. I had 6 in second semester and 5 in first semester, so that was quite a lot. And if you have less, if you have only like 3 or 4 to write, you guys only basically need to study 2 or 3 a day, or like just 2, but I had to do at least 2 or 3 just so that I could get through everything. And this also depends on how good you guys are at studying, how much time you need, and it just depends on whatever, but I would recommend 2 to 3 subjects a day to study. And how I like actually distributing those and seeing what I like to study on what date, and I told a lot of my friends about this and they actually really liked it, is that I use a backwards approach. So say if I have 3 weeks, my exam period is 3 weeks in its entirety, and I have 5 different exams to write, I actually like studying for my very last exam first, and then working my way backwards. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but I know that a lot of people actually started studying for their first exam first, and their second exam and third exam. But what happens is that usually for exam periods, you have a couple of days or even a week at the beginning where you have just to study. And then after that, it kind of goes boom, 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 and you have an exam and then a day off, an exam, day off. And personally, it doesn't work for me to just study the day before my exam. I like to spread out my studying, and I think that that works for a lot of people better. So that's why I like to use the backwards approach, because then by the time that you have to write your first exam, you've already been studying for the other ones, and then the closer you get to the exam, you start studying for that again, and it kind of just refreshes your memory instead of, oh, it's my cat, instead of studying for the entire thing again. So that's what works for me. So now that brings us to my daily study plan. And basically, you have to first decide how you want your day to go. So I know some people like staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning and studying really late. Now, I personally don't recommend that, but if that's you and you like sleeping in until noon and just doing that, feel free to do that. But what works for me is I usually would wake up around 9-ish, 8:30, 9, and then I would go to bed around 11 p.m. So that's kind of the schedule that worked for me, kind of adjust it to whatever you guys like. And how I would study is basically in 3-hour brackets with an hour break in between. So say for my first bracket, I would study from 9 a.m. to noon, and I would basically just pick one subject to study. And what's the most efficient, and there's actually research on this, is that people's concentration starts to dwindle after about an hour and a half, and it depends on everyone. I know a lot of my friends have really short attention spans. I'm kind of like on the medium side, and then I know some people who can study forever with just focused, and they're good at that, and I personally am not. So that's why I like to study for an hour and a half, and then I will take a 15-minute break, and then I'll study for an hour and a half again with the same subject, and then I'll take an hour break. Alright, so the second thing that you guys need to know on how to ace your finals is to get a really good study space. Now, this is different for absolutely everyone, so what works for me may not work for you guys, but you basically need to decide if you're better at studying in complete silence, like I personally am, or if you like a little bit of background noise or other people, or just whatever you like. So how I personally like to study, I'll get to that in a second, but some popular spaces that I know that work for some people are either the library or coffee shops or their room or studying in groups, and it just depends on the person really. So if you're studying in a library, it's pretty self-explanatory, just get yourself a spot and sit down and study. But if you're in a coffee shop, you want to make sure that you're a little bit away from where everyone else is, so you don't really want to be sitting where people are taking their orders constantly and you're hearing that in your ear. Make sure to go in a corner or kind of just like in a more secluded area. And a lot of people actually like studying in groups because it helps them kind of relay information back and forth, make sure they understand things, and it kind of, if you study in a group with people who are actually very focused, I personally don't like this, but the times that I have studied in groups, I found that it does help you focus a lot because it's kind of a little intimidating. You don't want to be the first one to kind of break the focusing pact and reach for your phone. It kind of really does help you focus if you're into that. What I like to do is study in my room. So if you're in your room, what really helps me is to open the windows and open the curtains so that I'm getting fresh air, as long as there's not construction sounds outside, and I'm also getting natural light, because I find that when I kind of stuff myself in a room, it gets a lot more stuffy when I'm just using artificial light, so I like using natural light. And another thing is, if you study on your desk, make sure it's a clean desk space, because if it's cluttered, it kind of just like stuffs you in more again. So I personally like studying on my bed, and I know that a lot of people frown on that because they're like, I fall asleep and I just don't like that. And if you're one of those people, then don't study on your bed. But I really like my bed because I like sprawling everything out in front of me and then just kind of sitting there and focusing, and that's just how I study. It's probably not very good for my back, to be honest, but it really does help me focus, so that's my study space. But you guys need to find what works for you and comment below and tell me what your study space is. Alright, so next is your study content, and this is basically what you're studying and how you're studying it. So no matter what course or subjects or whatever you're taking, they basically fall into two categories, and that's qualitative or quantitative courses. So qualitative courses are stuff that you really need to memorize, like biology, chemistry, history, all of that kind of things. And then your quantitative courses are basically your calculation courses. So that could be your math, your calculus, your accounting, some chemistry, and basically anything of those sorts. So any course that I've found has really fallen into one of those two. So for your qualitative courses, which are again your biology, your memorization courses basically, the tips that really help for me are to, number one, to study them in the morning. So in the morning is the best time to memorize things because your mind is fresh, you're kind of ready to go, you're not really worn out from studying a bunch of different things. So how I like to plan it is, in my study schedule, I like to plan my all my qualitative and memorization courses in the morning. So that's just how I like to do it. And then some things where I'm actually studying them that really help for me. Number one is to talk it out. So when I'm studying things, I'm like, okay, so I need to study these 5 people that are important in this chapter. I just kind of talk it out loud. I talk to myself. I kind of sound like a crazy person, but talking really helps reinforce it in my mind. And kind of along with that is writing it out. So studies show that red pen and red ink for some reason helps keep it in your memory, but I don't know. I have my own color coding system, which I will get to in a second. But basically, writing and talking help a lot. And another thing is, I don't like to use this, but a lot of people do use flashcards or cue cards. And a site that really helps for this, especially for definitions actually, it's called Quizlet. And you guys can just go on it and create your own sets of basically flashcards that are online, and you can search up other people's and share it with your friends. It's a little more fun, and there's kind of games that you guys can do too. So if you're into that, use that. I know that that's really helpful for language courses especially. My teacher in French in grade 12 used to do that for us, and it was super nice of her. So yeah, that also helps as well. And two other tips again for qualitative are to use pictures and mnemonics. So pictures, say if I'm studying something that has like 10 different subsections to it, I will literally just like make a story with some pictures, and that way when I'm writing it on a test, the first thing I do is write out the pictures, and then I kind of attach the definitions and titles to the pictures, and that kind of helps me. Another thing is mnemonics. So one thing that you guys probably know is Roy G. Biv, to remember the rainbow, the colors of the rainbow. And another thing is to make up a really silly story that will help you remember the first letter of every single thing that you need to memorize. So those are the tips for qualitative. And then for your quantitative courses, so these are your courses like math and calculus and accounting that you need to really like make calculations for. The tips that I have for that is basically the biggest one is practice makes perfect. Now that's probably so basic and you guys already know that, but for these, honestly going through and doing questions over and over and over and different types of them will really help prepare you for these kind of finals, because whatever they throw at you, if chances are you've done some questions that are similar to it, and that'll help recall your memory from them. So that's really the main thing for quantitative courses. But some other things are to do questions from different units at the same time. So I'll do one from unit 1 and another question from unit 5, and then kind of just like keep going like that. And by mixing up these questions, if there's a question on the test that your teacher is really trying to stump you on that kind of mixes things from different units, and sometimes they will do that for math, and it's super rude and I don't like it, but if they do, chances are if you've done questions from different units at the same time, it'll really help recall your memory of bringing them together and understanding them even more. So that really helps. And then the last tip for that, if you really hate the course, I know a lot of people, math is just not for them. So one thing that helps, instead of kind of tackling the beast straight on, is to start on easier concepts and then work your way to the difficult ones. Because if you start on something that you know you've struggled with the entire year, you just don't understand it, if you start by studying with that, chances are you're going to be like, nah, I'm done with this, and just stop studying in general. But if you start with smaller things that you understand, it kind of helps build your confidence slowly, and then once you get to the harder ones, you feel more ready and you're ready to tackle them. Alright, so the next thing to talk about is what to do in your breaks. Now, basically, for your breaks, you can do whatever you like. But the one rule that I always have is that it cannot be related to anything to do with school or subjects or anything of the sort. So personally for me, when I'm studying, like I said, I like to study on my bed. So I, on my breaks, like to get out of the room, because otherwise I feel like I'm just in there the entire day and it's just not fun. So one of the things I like to do is to socialize, believe it or not, because I don't like studying with people. I like studying in complete silence. So just kind of going out and talking to them about their day, not studying, not anything to do with work, but just kind of like anything, TV shows, whatever. And if you're talking to other people, it really helps get your mind off and kind of like makes you a little bit more happy. And other than that, you can play with your pet. My cat's kind of rudely just chilling there. Or you can watch TV shows, even go for a walk outside, go for a run. Who am I kidding? I hate running, but if you guys are into the workout type, it really does help if you like that. So basically, yeah, on your breaks, go eat. Yeah, eating is another really important thing. As much as I like candy, and I do admit I will have candy or chocolate on my break, make sure you're really getting some proteins in for your meals, especially because proteins really help with your memory and just focusing. So yeah, on your break, do anything that's really unrelated to school. So next is actually taking your test. And this kind of seems simple. Most people are like, I'm just going to walk in and do it. But honestly, some people have a lot of anxiety taking tests and just get really nervous even though they know everything. And so some tips that really help me personally kind of calm down and prepare myself for taking a test is to, number 1, set up 2 alarms. So, especially if it's an early morning test, I've had so many nights where I just couldn't sleep because I was so scared that my alarm wouldn't go off. So having 2 alarms kind of reassured me of that. And also having a friend to walk to the exam, I would just be like, make sure that I'm off at this time so that we can walk together, and that would work because me and my friend Kat, which you guys saw on my room tour, we would always walk to all of our exams together. So that way it just kind of makes sure that we're both there and they're on time, and that helped. And two things that I always brought with me to every exam is my watch and my water bottle. And another thing for taking the test, so I personally don't like to bring any notes or anything with me to the exam. I know some of my friends do. They basically just like read them right up until they're in the exam room. So it helps refresh their memory, but I don't like to do that. It just kind of psychs me out. So just kind of find what works for you. Maybe try one of each for different exams and see what works. Okay, so the last section for how to ace your finals is basically just an assortment of random little tips that don't really fit into other sections, but I think they're super important to relay on to you guys. So the first one is to not really push yourself. And what I mean by that is that some days I would just wake up and be like, I cannot study. But I would force myself and I'd be like, you're going to sit down, you're going to study this, you need to get through these. And it just wouldn't work because I'd be getting so frustrated and I couldn't really memorize or practice or get any questions right, and it would just be awful. So on those days, and I'm not saying that do this every single day and just never study, but if it's a day that you're really not in the mood to study, don't force yourself because it just won't turn out. And instead, maybe take a break for an hour or two and see how you feel after that. And if you still don't feel good, then just take the day off. If you've planned your study schedule well enough to be able to incorporate all these days for studying, if you take a day off, it's really not going to be that bad, and then the day after you'll feel refreshed and ready to go. So that's a tip that I have. And another one is to make sure you get enough sleep, because like I said, it doesn't really matter. Well, it technically does because you should be awake in the day, but I know some people do like studying at night, so if you're one of those night owls who like staying up way late, make sure you're actually getting enough sleep, because the brain actually solidifies your memories while you guys sleep. So if you're not getting that rest and you're literally pulling all-nighters and cramming all day before your test, you're not going to feel that good and you're probably not going to remember that much. So I know that a lot of people actually don't know the importance of sleeping or just choose to ignore it, but I really think that's an important tip, and I'm going to relay it on to you guys because it is important and you guys do need enough sleep in order to do well. And then my last tip is to use but don't abuse color. So I know that a lot of people are just kind of like spewing out rainbows all over their notes, but I personally don't like that. I have a very strict coding system, as nerdy as that sounds, of how I use my color, because that really helps my brain kind of just like know what everything is. So what I like to do is I use a blue for headings of things and starting a new chapter, and then I use red for actual vocab words and basically important terms that I need to know. And everything else is written in black, by the way, so I generally write in black unless I'm writing in one of these colors. And then green is for main kind of categories, and then pink is for subcategories. So these are my little kind of hints for how to use color. And if you guys like it, try it out, see if it works for you, because my brain just kind of knows as soon as I'm looking for a formula or if I'm looking for a vocab word, if I look to red, then I find it there. And if I'm looking for a heading, then I look to blue. And it just kind of like really helps me organize all my notes in that way. Alright guys, that is it for my tips on how to ace your finals. Hopefully it works for you guys. Comment below and let me know if it does, and if you learned something new that you guys want to incorporate into your own study schedules, or if you guys do something very similar to what I do, let me know because I want to hear back from you guys. And if it worked and hopefully you guys do ace your finals, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel as well. And yeah, best of luck to you guys writing your finals. I know you can do this. I believe in you. You got this. So yeah, I will talk to you guys later. Bye!